Okay, Councillor Tuckwell, you can start the meeting.
Good evening and welcome to a virtual meeting of the Central and South Committee of the London Borough of Hillingdon. This is a virtual meeting that is broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell and I am the chairman of this evening's meeting. We're in virtual format, but I think councillors and members are well versed in the online housekeeping stipulations. I'll quickly run through them. It's about keeping mobile phones on silence. If you've got a microphone, keeping it on mute. And obviously it's one person speaking at a time, and I as chairman will call individuals to speak. Again, as we're in virtual format, I will do an attendance roll call. So I will call your names out. I could just ask if you confirm if you're in attendance. So we'll start with the vice chairman this evening, Councillor Chapman.
Yes, I'm present, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan, the Labour lead.
Yes, I'm present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
I'm present, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brightman.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale.
I'm present. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar.
I'm present, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birra.
I'm present, Chairman. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Dillon hasn't yet joined us. Is that correct, Neil?
I've just heard, Chairman, I've just heard from Councillor Dillon. He sends his apologies due to a family bereavement, so he is unable to make it for that reason.
Okay. No, thank you, Councillor Duncan. We'll make a record of that for Councillor Dillon. Okay. Neil, is that all the voting members accounted for this evening that are due to be here?
It is, Chairman.
Okay. Right, we need to do the same for the officers that are supporting this evening's meeting. So I'll start this evening, just again, same process for our highways officer, Alan Tilley.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Planning officer this evening, Meg Harani.
Present, Chairman.
Arboricultural manager, Sophie Coughlin.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Sophie, and welcome, by the way. Our head of planning, James Roger.
I'm present, Chairman.
Thank you. Our democratic services officer this evening, Neil Fraser.
Present, Chairman.
And our legal advisor this evening, Kerry Monroe.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Neil, is that all of our officers present this evening?
It is, Chairman.
Okay. In terms of technical meeting control, if any councillor leaves the virtual meeting partway through due to a loss of connection, etc., then I will continue the meeting unless we are not quorum, which we know is 3 councillors. Importantly, if any councillor does leave the meeting for a period of time, then they will not be able to vote for the item for which they were not present. Okay, that covers off the housekeeping and attendance protocols. We can now start to go into the main body of the agenda. So we'll start with agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as has already been set out, apologies received from Councillor Dillon.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 2 this evening is declarations of interest in matters before this meeting. Are there any? I'm looking at the grid view. I'm seeing nodding heads, so I don't think we've got any declarations, Neil.
No declarations, Chairman.
Okay. We can then move on to agenda item 3, which is to receive and agree the minutes of the last meeting, which was the 3rd of September. So again, I'll take any indications from councillors if there's any changes to that agenda. Again,
No
I'm not
changes.
seeing any indications. So Neil, we can take those minutes as agreed, yeah?
Agreed, Chairman.
Okay, agenda item 4 this evening is matters notified in advance, which there are none. So agenda item 5 is to confirm the public and private reports this evening. We do have 2 parts of this evening's meeting. Agenda items 6 to 12 will be in part 1, which is the public part of the meeting. And agenda item 13 this evening is in part 2, which is a private matter. And when we get to the end of agenda item 12, Democratic Services Officer will disconnect the YouTube feed and the committee will debate that item in private. Okay, that's the preamble up until the applications themselves. So that brings us nicely on to agenda item 6 this evening, which is 3 Cedar Court, Vine Lane, Uxbridge. This item is a petition item, and I think we have got some statements which Neil will read out after we've heard the presentation, of which I will now hand over to Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application at 3 Cedars Court off Vine Lane for a removal of an Indian bean tree which is covered by a tree preservation order. The report sets out quite clearly why the application has been recommended for refusal, and I would refer members to paragraph 6.1 of the report, which clearly states that whilst the applicant is seeking the removal of the tree in total, the only information that has been provided is that the tree is hollow, and in your officer's view, that isn't sufficient to recommend approval for the removal of the tree. The tree does, as members will see from the photograph in front of the report, it does present a fine visual impact, or has a very important visual impact, not only on the street scene but in the wider conservation area. And so in order for officers to recommend that such a tree is removed, there are a couple of technical tests which can be done, and my colleague Sophie will be able to enlighten us if members want further information on that. There's what's called a resistor graph or a picus test, and both of these determine the amount of good wood as opposed to decayed wood, and then that allows officers to determine whether the tree is in a dangerous condition or in a state which we can then allow for its removal. And the applicant has not gone through this process of carrying out these tests, and therefore it's recommended for refusal. Members will see when we get to the applicant's photo that the tree is partly hollow. That's quite clear, but until these tests are carried out, we can't agree to its removal. So for that reason, we're recommending refusal. So if I can just, the photographs that I've got are for the applicant's presentation. So they're the only photograph other than that is on the front of the report. So if we wait for the applicant's presentation, then I can show the photographs. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Meg. I think members will probably have quite a few questions on this one, but I guess what we'll want to do is hear from the petitioners, the applicant, and I believe Ward Councillor has submitted a statement as well. So it's probably at that point, Neil, we can start to read those statements out, yeah?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so firstly, the statement from the lead petitioner and their nominated representatives. So firstly, neighbours and I who signed the petition to save the Indian bean tree want it saved. I would like to think this historical green conservation area remains in its beauty, and hope that you respect the meaning of the tree protection order already on it, and not tree pending oblivion. Two further statements from the nominated representatives of the lead petitioner were received, the first of which states, I am part of the petition organised, and I am writing to you in regards to the court application of 3 Cedars Court to have the rare Indian bean tree removed from the address. I live at Cedars Drive, and I can see the tree from my back garden, which is approximately 70 yards away. I have lived at this address for 35 years and have admired this beautiful tree in the spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The tree originates from the South United States, and the term Indian refers to the Native Americans. It comes into leaf very late in June and develops white flowers. The extraordinary seed pods which it develops during summer are up to 40 centimeters long and hang from the branches right through to the winter months. It is distressing to think that this very rare tree should be poleaxed for no good reason other than the inconvenience of sweeping up its leaves during the winter months. Over the last 2 years, I have seen many trees in the Hillingdon area being chopped down for no good reason. The second representative states, I've only recently learned of the application to fell the Indian bean tree at 3 Cedars Court. I am dismayed this request is even being given consideration, as there is a tree protection order on the tree. I live just behind Cedars Court, and my objections are, the tree has a tree protection order on it. Surely this would mean it is protected. The residents at 3 Cedars Court knew that there was a huge tree in the garden before they decided to live there. Too often, people move into properties with large trees in the garden and want them removed a few years down the line. The Indian bean tree is a beautiful example of its kind, with abundant leaves and bean pods, and seems perfectly healthy. It provides a home to many birds, the numbers of which have fallen due to a loss of habitat. With what we know of global warming, it seemed irresponsible to cut down a tree of this size. Planting small saplings does not make up for the loss. Unfortunately, I do not know the reason for the application, but there have been too many large, healthy trees cut down in this borough over the last few years because they have been in the way. Tree protection orders need to be enforced. We then received a submission from the applicant, which reads, "Hereby, I kindly request your attention to the present request in relation to the removal of the tree located in my grounds. Unfortunately, a proper assessment from your office was not conducted, as no detailed observation was performed. Due to the current pandemic situation, the officer observed from a distance and did not realise the depth of the decay. With this in mind, I would really appreciate it if you could take your time to review the attached photo evidence and consider reassessing the situation with a complete and close observation from your officers. As stated previously, the degree of decay is getting worse and worse, jeopardising the lives of 3 people directly and others via the car park next to the property. Please kindly reconsider not only the aesthetic or natural inheritance linked to this tree, but also the safety and lives of my family and neighbours." And I will now share the pictures provided by the applicant. This is the first picture. Second picture. Third picture. Fourth picture. And fifth picture. These were also circulated to members prior to the meeting. Finally, committee members, I do have a statement from Councillor Graham, who is the ward councillor, who states, "As an Uxbridge North ward councillor, I wish to add my support to the petitioner's request for refusal of this application to fell a rare Indian bean tree, which is subject to a tree protection order and standing as it is in the historical Hillingdon conservation area. Therefore, I hereby ask the committee to refuse this application." Thank you, Chairman. Back to you.
Okay, thank you for that, Neil. And I'd like to place on record the committee's thanks to the petitioners, the applicant, and indeed the ward councillor for submitting their statements for us to consider this evening. Okay, right. We've heard from the officers. We've also heard from, as we've just heard, the applicant, ward councillor, and petitioners. How do we want to start this debate? Any takers? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I think we've all read the report and we can all understand the issues. I would like to ask Sophie, I mean, we've seen the photographs and also the claim has been made that it's hollow and that 3 different tree companies have stated that the tree is potentially dangerous. So I wonder if Sophie could just comment a little bit more about that so that we have a little bit more information about this. It's hard to judge. I mean, we don't want to refuse this application and then next week Storm Alex steams in from France and the hollow tree is knocked down and we're responsible for potential, injury or death to people.
I think before we go to Sophie, James wants to come in there, but Sophie, we'll let you pick up Councillor Duncan's point. But James, I think you wanted to add something before we come in there.
I think it's before Sophie talks in detail, I think it's important to stress that officers cannot say whether a tree is or isn't dangerous because the issue here is there's a scientific test to establish whether it is dangerous. So I'd be concerned if Sophie felt pressurised to say categorically it is or isn't dangerous, because the advice here is that there's a test to establish if it's dangerous. And what we're recommending as officers is not just that it's refused, but there's an informative advising the applicant that there is a test. And that informative to me is quite important, because it then it means that we're saying as a council, we do understand your concern, but there's a way of testing whether the tree is in fact dangerous. I'll pass over to Sophie at this juncture.
Well, could I just say I did see that, and I just wondered if officers had raised this point with the applicant at some point, that there is a test, but that the applicant had not done this, and that's why it come to us, so that we can make a decision and say, well, you need to do it.
Okay, I think at that point we can bring in Sophie now to answer the points that Councillor Duncan's raised. I've also got Councillor Chamdow and Councillor Ahmed Bolano as indicated. So over to you, Sophie.
Okay. What I'd say is that obviously the photos do show that there is some hollowing in the tree, but what the tests will show is the sort of percentage between the hollowing and the good wood, and it will then show us exactly how much good wood there is left in the tree. The actual canopy cover of the leaves in the canopy area is probably approximately about 90%. So the canopy of the tree appears to be quite healthy, and that's why we need these extra tests to show the extent of the decay. Obviously, you've mentioned that they've used some tree companies that have come in with their quotes that are recommending the fell. There is two different types of tree specialists. You have tree surgeons who they've got quotes from, and they're specialised in actually doing the felling or the pruning. And then you have tree consultants who give advice on the health of the tree and potential future management. The only thing about getting the quotes from the tree surgeon and attaching them as evidence is that they have a vested interest in their advice, because they're the ones that will ultimately get paid for the removal of the tree if we allowed that. I think that answered all your questions.
Okay. Councillor Duncan, is that okay for you?
It is up to a point. I just wanted to know, once decay is in a tree like this, or any tree, can measures be taken to stop that decay and make it safe, or are we just in a position of delaying what may be an inevitable action?
Sophie, okay to come back on that?
Yeah, so part of the test will show us whether the tree's got, it's called reaction wood, so whether the tree has created defences within itself to cope with the decay. Now, in some instances, that can stop the decay, or at least slow it down. There's also, once we've got the either resistograph or Picus tests, depending on how much decay there is, it may be that they reduce the crown. They may want to apply to reduce the crown, which will allow us to extend the life of the tree whilst minimising any potential danger it has. But that's all dependent on obviously exactly what the tests show.
Okay, I can see Councillor Duncan nodding now. I take it you're...
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you,
Okay.
Sophie. Thank you,
All
Chair.
right. No, thank you. Okay, Councillor Chamdow.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Councillor Duncan's made my points because it's a straightforward report. But on page 13, as she pointed out, it does say there's 3 different companies who are saying the tree is hollow, which is, you can see that from the picture. It's not hollow, it's a great big hole in there. It's, but I'm no tree expert, so I have to go by the reports that before me. And again, the point about the tree being saved, I understand that's been made. Now, from what I understand, tell me if I'm correct or incorrect. For your understanding is tree surgeons and tree consultants. So you are basically putting weighting on what advice, conclusion tree surgeons give and what tree consultants give. Am I right on that? That's the first point. Secondly, I like I said, I'm not a tree surgeon, but I've had my teeth looked at, and if there's decay, the dentist either fills it, removes it, or puts a crown on it. So something on those lines, because for me, it's a clear cut. The applicant hasn't given enough information, or the information that should be required. So it's a straightforward for me. But that page 13.6.1 clouds it a bit.
Okay, Sophie, is anything you want to come back on there with Councillor Chamdow's question?
All I'd say is that I would confirm that we would put more weighting on a consultant's report. That's because they're higher qualified and their expertise is more in the actual management and health of the tree, rather than tree surgeons are more qualified in the actual climbing and dismantling or pruning of trees.
Can I come back?
Yeah, come back. Yeah.
I'm a bit lost as to if we got clear-cut procedures. Is the applicant aware of this? Because obviously, if they're sidetracking or going around, surely, if it's that dangerous a tree and it's posing a risk, surely they would have gone. Has somebody gone back to them and said, "Look, this is the information we need before we give you the judgment"? Because on Councillor Duncan's point, should something happen tomorrow, obviously, I would be concerned about that.
I think on that, James mentioned, Councillor Chamdale, that there would be an informative which would give the applicant a steer as to what was required to move this application forward. James, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's quite important, the informative, because we've dealt with tree applications before, and normally they're just refused. So there isn't actually that extra bit of information for the applicant. And I think in this case, it's quite important because we're basically saying you need to do a test. If that test then comes back with results that suggest the tree needs to have a lot of pruning, work to the crown or felling, then obviously what the tree officer is saying is that more scientific report we can put more weighting on. But at the moment, we don't have information we can put a lot of weighting on that we feel puts us in a position where we're happy allowing the felling of a high amenity value tree. But
Okay.
I think Sophie's actually given some very clear and very helpful advice to the planning committee, if I may say so.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Chamdale, you okay with that?
Yeah. Well. After listening to everything, all the advice that's been given, I'll be happy to take this forward and go with.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Ahmed Walana and Councillor Chapman indicating. So, Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We heard from petitioner, we heard from ward councillor and applicant argument for and against. And we also heard from the presentation, and James clearly said that we don't know whether it is or it is not a dangerous tree. So I think in principle, as a committee, we will not be making any decision unless we have a test to be carried out and see what the result is. There are so many trees that they look very dangerous, but we don't know whether they are dangerous or not. We just need a comprehensive report, test report, whether it's dangerous or not. If it says dangerous and is going to cause public harm, then obviously we are clear making a decision on principle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ahmed Walana. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points I wanted to query, and I'm afraid it's back to 6.1. We've already heard reference being made to the 3 tree companies. I think it was suggested they were effectively quotes. Can we clarify, did these companies give a report on the tree, or did they give a quote for felling the tree and as part of that suggest that it's dangerous, etc.? The other thing I was going to ask, I'm assuming that the zistograph test and the Picus test, I'm assuming that these are the industry standard tests sort of thing. Assuming that we reject the application, and obviously the applicant is advised to undertake these tests, I'm assuming these are relatively quick and easy to turn around things, even given the current other priorities, shall we say, at the moment. So conceivably, could this come back in a month's time if the tests are positive, shall we say?
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Sophie, a couple of points there raised in relation to were they quotes or reports, and is this an industry standard set of tests that are being recommended?
And indeed, Chairman, how quickly can it be turned round? So,
and indeed, how quickly can it be organised? Sophie?
Yeah, so they are standard tests. They don't necessarily have to do both tests. They're slightly different. One drills in and makes tiny little holes and checks how the drill goes against the hard or soft wood. And then that's the resistor graph. And then a Pica's test is more, they put sensors around the trunk of the tree, and the sensors sort of ping electrons to each other, and that then brings up a different way to show decay. So you don't have to do both, but one or the other will give the answers that we need. In terms of the turnaround for these, that would be something that the applicant would arrange with a arboricultural consultant. So it would really depend on how quickly they can do that. And then the information from the tree surgeons were quotes from them with this tree is decayed, so we recommend felling.
Thank you, Sophie. Councillor Chapman, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you, Sophie. That's been a great help. On the basis of that, I'm more than happy to second Councillor Chamdow's recommendation to refuse.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Just a quick question for me for Sophie, really, and it builds on Councillor Chapman's point. Whatever results we get back, will they be sort of from an accredited tree consultant or tree company? Would that be the case?
So we always recommend that residents and applicants use a tree consultant that is registered with the Arboricultural Association, and that means that they've all got the recommended qualifications and they give advice to a certain standard.
Okay, no, thank you for that, Sophie. Right, we are seconded to refuse this this application. I'm not seeing any other councillors indicate, so I think we're at a point now we can actually move to the vote on this one. So this is to vote to go with officer's recommendation to refuse the application for felling this tree. So Councillor Chapman, you seconded. So Councillor Ahmed Walana?
Yes, to support the officer's recommendations to refuse it.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman?
Go with officer's recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale moved. So Councillor Tubadar?
Officer's recommendation for refusal, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
I do want to go with officer's recommendation, but based on what Sophie just said, I wonder if we can enlarge the informative to say that the resistor graph or Pica's test can be undertaken by a registered or authorized, whatever the correct terminology would be, because we don't want someone just coming back and saying that it's been done. We need, because otherwise this is going to drag this out even more. We do want it done by an authorized registered person. So it does sort of advise through that informative. I know it's not conditional, I know it's just an informative, but at least I think that would be the most helpful form of the informative. So I know we're halfway through the voting, sorry. I did want to say it before, but that's what I would like to agree to if possible. Thank you.
Okay. Well, before we go to Councillor Bira for his vote, Kerry Monroe's indicating, so I'm sure you want to come in at that point, Kerry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to highlight that reading the agenda, the tree is in situ of the conservation area, which means that it automatically gets an interim protection. So it's crucial that the committee is understanding the nature of the application, because even if the tree is removed or if it's dying, the owner would have the responsibility to replant another tree, or if the owner is asking for permission to dispense with the tree in its entirety. That's we need to establish what the applicant is asking and precisely, because he can either dispense with his obligation to keep up with the TPO, or request that the tree is removed and then the obligation falls that he replants because it's in the conservation area under section 213 of the Town and Country Planning Act.
Okay. in relation to that. James, is anything you can help us out with here?
Well, because we're refusing the application, I think Craig's correct. It would be an issue, but it would be an issue if we were approving. But as we're refusing, I think it's fine. And I think in terms of it completely made sense what Councillor Duncan said about adding some clarification on the informative.
Okay. And if members that have previously voted are happy with that, then we'll allow you to beef up that informative, James. Yeah. Are you okay with that, Councillor Duncan?
Yes, I'm happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
And I can take your vote as.
Yes, I did say that I would go with the recommendation if we could just give that little bit of information in the informative. Thank you.
I just wanted to get that in for completeness, so we recorded what you were happy with the resultant conversation. So yes, that leaves you, Councillor Birra. Got to you at the end.
Finally, you got me here. Thank you very much, Chairman. I go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Right, Neil, I make that as unanimous 7 votes for officer's recommendation to refuse this application. Can you confirm?
Yes, I confirm that, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's off agenda item 6 is approved for refusal. Right, so let's now move on to agenda item 7. Oh, by the way, Sophie, I think you're okay to leave us now, actually. So thank you very much for your contribution this evening. It was very worthwhile, and you really did add some value to the discussion. Thank you.
That's fine. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. Okay, we can now move on to agenda item 7, which is 8 Northfield Parade for a change of use. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for 8 Northfield Parade for a change of use from retail to a takeaway. If I just refer members to page 21, section 4, members will see that since the 1st of September, there's been a change to the use classes order, and there is no longer an A class use any longer. So there are no A1, A2 or A3 uses. These have all been grouped into a class E, a new class, and that has come into force since the 1st of September. Class A5 of the old order, which was takeaways, has now been moved to sui generis use. Therefore, it's in a class of its own. However, before any applications that were received before the 1st of September, such as this one, we still have to treat them as we would have done under the old use classes order. So that is the reason why you've got the headings that you have, and why the report still refers to the old use classes order. But as from any applications received after the 1st of September, will be with the new use classes order. And that does have an impact on how we treat these applications, because a number of our policies are almost redundant in terms of the 70% and so on. And obviously we have to look at that and see how we go forward with that. But in this particular case, the application is for a property which is within a designated local parade, Northfield Parade, and in those parades, generally we would be looking to have 50% retail uses. So if I refer members to page 22 and section 7.01, members will see that there are 9 units in this parade, and that currently there are 6 units which are in retail use, and 1 restaurant, 1 takeaway, and a laundrette. So even with the loss of this one, we would still have a good provision of retail uses within the parade. And also members will know this site as being opposite a very large Asda. So there is sufficient retail provision for us to say that this change of use is acceptable. If I can just go to the presentation.
Sim, can you get the cat? Sim?
You're not on mute, Councillor Brightman.
If I can just go through, that's the unit mid-terrace. The large Asda is this unit here. And members will see the proposed and existing floor plan and elevations. There is a slight change to the elevation. The door is being moved from the centre to the end, but other than that, it's all internal changes. That's the unit. It's the this unit here. The Akala food and wine unit, and as I said before, there are sufficient retail units in the parade to provide the required level. So with that, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that, Meg. Okay, no petition item on this, so it's straight into members' debate. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, I think that we're overtaken by the legislation here anyway. So, I mean, it's changed. It's in a use class now, which is allowed. I'd like to move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Chapman, I think you just picked Councillor Ahmed Boulana to it there. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think I did actually. I'd like to second the recommendation.
Okay. Got Councillor Chamdal after Councillor Ahmed Boulana. So, Councillor Ahmed Boulana.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was meant to say that I'm happy to move, but it has been moved, so I support that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chamdal.
Yeah, but just everything's been said I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other members indicate, so we can go straight to the vote on this one. Councillor Chapman, you seconded. So, Councillor Ahmed Boulana.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
I'll go with officer's recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal.
The officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar.
For officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duncan, you move. So, Councillor Bira.
You're mute.
Councillor Bira.
Sorry. I go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bira. I make that unanimous 7 to go with officer's recommendation. Can you confirm that, Neil?
Yes, confirmed, Chairman.
Okay, agenda item number 7 is approved this evening. Thank you very much, everybody. Meg, another takeaway, a bit further down the road, agenda item 8. Can I hand over to you to take us through this one?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as you said, another application for a takeaway. This is 36 Cold Harbour Lane. This is a single-storey unit, unusual in that it is a single-storey unit. It's one of 2, I think. Again, as Councillor Duncan said, events have slightly overtaken us in terms of the changes to the use classes order, to that, again, I refer members to page 35 and section 7.01, where we've got comments from our own planning policy team.
Meg, can I just stop you there? Councillor Chamdal's indicating profusely.
Sorry, I'm just indicating that I will speak.
Oh, right, okay. I'll get in there first. Meg, back to you. Sorry, I thought there was an issue to raise, but no, Councillor Chamdal, thank you. Meg, if you can continue, please.
Sorry, if I can refer members to page 35 and section 7.01. We have comments from our own planning policy team basically saying that our policy DMTC1 is in essence redundant, and that we have to treat each case as on its own merit. And in this particular case, we are recommending approval. The level of retail units within the primary frontage is below the normally required 70% that was part of the previous policy, or part of the policy, but that will in many parades and frontages decline, because you will be allowed to go under the new use classes order from retail uses to other non-retail uses without permission. So we are being pragmatic in this particular application and recommending approval on the basis that it doesn't result in a large area of non-retail frontage, and also that there isn't a congregation of such similar uses in this particular part of the parade or part of the frontage. So for those reasons, we are recommending approval. If I can just go to the presentation. That's the unit. The dark blue is the primary shopping. The light blue is the secondary. It's on the edge of the primary shopping frontage. And it's a single story unit. And as members can see, there's two such units. No changes other than the extractor flue at the top there, and that is the elevation gives it a bit of a false. It is set some distance back from the front. I can go back to the floor plan and the roof plan, and you see that it is set virtually to the rear of the unit. And that's the unit. And as you can see, the flue in itself will not be particularly visible because it is set some distance back from the frontage. So in visual terms, we're comfortable with that. So with that, we are recommending approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Meg. Okay, second change of use of the evening. No petition, but I have got Councillor Chamdale, followed by Councillor Brightman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to say a similar sort of type of application, and with all the changes that we have, I believe it does. You know, looking at cases on their own merit, rather than having a blanket ban like the 70%. But we have in the past overturned the 70% previously when we had in certain shopping centres. So we are sort of sensitive to when circumstances change, both in shopping and sort of parades. The only thing that I was going to ask was different was about the flue. There's no sort of, I understand what Meg has said. Is the existing one already in place? But will it sort of be the same sort of standard now, what we have now, for this air extraction system on noise and odour? Or are they going to change it to something different? Or have the standards changed, possibly?
Meg, can you come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I might have misled members slightly if Councillor Chamdale thinks there's an existing flue there. There isn't an existing one. This is a new one that's proposed, so it will be up to the latest standards. And I think our conditions, if I can just check, would cover that requirement. So
I didn't see any.
No, the flue isn't existing. It is new. We can check. The condition wasn't probably applied because we have the information that's required. So we can check that to make sure. If additional conditions are required, then I would request members delegated authority to the head of planning to add such conditions. But generally, we would put these conditions on unless the details have been received up front, and I would suggest that that is the case in this particular application. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chamdal, do you want to come back?
Yeah, because it's just on that COM20, it does say no air extraction system shall be used on the premises until a scheme for the control of noise, odour emanating from the site has been submitted. So I would be more comfortable if we do include that. And if we do include that, give delegated authority, I'll be more than happy to go with officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Chamdal. Councillor Brightman and then Councillor Duncan followed after.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, Councillor Chamdal has covered the point I was going to make, and so therefore I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Just to clarify that, are we saying then, Meg, that we're going to add a condition on extraction, air extraction system, noise and odour?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think just to make sure that we have sufficient information, we will add that condition on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to ask for a condition. I wonder, Meg, if you could just show us, there's a photograph. We can see that there are balconies at the front of the flats, but I wasn't quite sure. On the plan, it said position of windows in that side elevation of the flats. But could we just see that photograph again, please? Just to see, because this flue is sort of set back. So I think it's the previous one. Or maybe it's that. I don't think we've got another photograph that shows the side of it. It's showing position of windows, doesn't it?
Might be helpful because the red lines show the position of the windows in the side elevation. And you'll see that there is some distance from those windows to the actual flue.
Yes. Well, I think that a condition hopefully would cover that, because you'd be able to look at that in more detail, wouldn't you?
Yes, I mean, we would be, with the condition, we'd be looking at fumes, smells and noise as well.
Yeah. Because I think the limits are sort of known about those, aren't they? They're quite clearly sort of specified even for residential properties. So I know they are for commercial properties. Wow. So, yeah, thank you very much for that. That's helpful. Yes, I'm happy, and I think a condition, as suggested by Meg, would cover that. I hope we could amend the recommendation to include that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'm not seeing any other members indicate their willingness to speak. So I think we can go to the vote, but I think it's just worth clarifying that the debate that we've just had, which is that we are going to be adding, I'm going to be providing delegated authority to the head of planning to add a condition which will cover off air extraction system, noise and odour. And that'll be added to the conditions. So on that basis, we can go to the vote now. So Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support the officer's recommendations to approve it, subject to any delegated authority to add further conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brightman, you seconded. Councillor Chamdal, you moved. Councillor Tubadar.
For officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
4 as amended, please, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. And Councillor Bira?
Thank you, Chairman. I go with officer's recommendation with the amendments.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Neil, I make that unanimous 7 votes for officer's recommendation with those changes to that condition.
Yes, agreed,
Additional condition. Okay, can confirm agenda item number 8 is approved this evening. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, now we're going to have to do a little bit of thinking about this one, because the next 4 items are all in relation to the same address. So we are going to have one presentation. Meg might need to just sort of help us through to understand the nuances between the various applications, but we will have to have 4 votes. So we'll have to work through that somehow. Meg, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, there are 4 separate applications for this property, 42A Windsor Street. So it's the conversion of the upper floors of the units to, in the first application, item 9 and 10. Item 9 is a planning application. Item 10 is the listed building consent application. So those 2 are the same, but one is a planning application and one is a listed building consent application for the conversion of the upper floors to provide 2 one-bed masonettes and 2 one-bed flats, so 4 units in total. The flats all comply with council standards, and if I can refer members to page I can let's go to it. Yeah, so page 62, members will see the size of the unit set out. One-bed units normally require 50 square metres, and one-bed units over 2 floors require 58 square metres. These smallest one of these is 67 square metres. So these are generous units which your officers consider make up for, in a way, the lack of amenity space. This is a town centre site as well, so there is limited amenity space provided for these units. So we are recommending approval because the units comply with all the requirements. Conservation officer is comfortable with the changes that are being proposed to the building, and therefore items 9 and 10 are recommended for approval. Item 11 and 12, or items 11 and 12, are slightly different, or they're a variation on the change of use of the upper floors from 4 units to, in this particular case, 3 units. So you have 2 one-bed flats and a 2-bed masonette. So again, the units are very generous in size, and again, we are recommending approval. So if I can just go through the 2 separate sets of plans, if you like. So that's the particular unit. Members will see the dark brown is listed buildings. The yellow is conservation area. So it's in a conservation area. It is listed building as well. So very important to make sure that any changes to the building are acceptable. And this is the existing and proposed block plan. Members will see that there are slight changes being made to the roof of the building, which provides light to a landing. And so these are the existing floor plans. And the existing elevations, very attractive building, and then the change internally to the units themselves. So you have they're all 1-bed units in this particular case, and the changes to, so you have some internal amenity space here, which is provided with light from the roof. So there is some amenity space, but it doesn't comply obviously with our normal requirements. As I said before, in lieu of that, the units are very generous, and this is a town centre site, so we've considered that to be acceptable in this case. And these are the proposed elevations. Very little changes externally that will be seen. And that's the actual unit. And then we have the same plans and photographs. This is the listed building consent. And then for the items 11 and 12, we have again the same. And then it rather than having 4 1-bed units, it then becomes 1 unit to the front and 2 to the rear. So you have a masonette at the front to provide a 2-bed unit. So you have 2 bedrooms and then the living room and kitchen first floor there. So and again the 1-bed units to the rear. The same changes that are proposed externally, and again very few changes. You'll see that the change to the roof, which provides the light and so on to the amenity space in that unit, and then the photographs. So, and again item 12 is the same plan. So we are recommending approval. The planning applications are subject to section 106, which restricts parking permits for occupants of the units. With that, thank you, Chairman, and we're recommending approval.
Okay, thank you for that, Meg. Quite a bit for members to get their heads around. It's a part of the world that I think we all know as members. Janet, Councillor Duncan, do you want to start the debate as you indicated?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to confirm with Meg, it is a listed building and there are no visible changes either to the high street frontage or even the rear. It's mainly the roof lights going in, which one would only be able to see, you know, from special angles. But basically, the listed structure stays the same to all external appearances. Is that the case, please?
That is the case. There are changes to the roof of the building, and there are obviously some roof lights that are going in, which will be visible. But other than that, there are no changes which would be visible. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, then I think this is good. It extends the life of the listed building, puts it to good residential use, and I would like to move officer's recommendation. This is just on the first one we're dealing with, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes.
Yes, so I would like to move it on item 9, isn't it?
We are going to have to go around the houses on all 4.
Yes, I know, but as we're just dealing with this one first, thank you. I move it.
Right, I've got Councillor Chamdow as indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, about the amenity space, I understand it's not complying with policy, but you're quite right in terms of the sizes of the room compared to some of the applications we do receive. They are very generous. And obviously going off of the point of Councillor Duncan's has made as well, the external appearance will not change apart from the roof lights. So then I am more than happy to second it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdale. I've got a couple of other councillors who've indicated. I've got Councillor Chapman and Councillor Birra. So, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with this, to be honest. I mean, as has been pointed out, amenity space, I think they've mentioned Fastenage Park and Rockingham Vet, which is fine, sort of thing, and obviously there's no parking. My reading of it, though, is that there would be minor changes on the ground floor at the back for the installation of a door and a gate for the bin store. I mean, it's a quibble point, but my understanding is that there would be changes. What I was going to suggest, bearing in mind the issues we've had with other buildings, I'm thinking of one on the Uxbridge Road not long ago, could we put a condition in that the rear gate to the bin store, the default is that it's locked and maintained? I assumed it would be anyway, but just to be on the safe side. The other thing, on page 53, where it references the bin store, reference is made to the suggestion of an informal on-plot management regime to produce an informal arrangement, but it does suggest it could be done by a formal planning condition. Can I suggest that we put in the formal planning condition as well?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Meg, can you come back on those couple of points raised there?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, the Councillor Chapman is correct. There is a slight change to the rear to provide the door for the bin store. We can condition that the maintenance of the door, or that it's locked and so on when not in use. So we can add that condition. I think members have requested it on other applications as well. So we'll try and add it on as a standard condition in future. Thank you, Chairman.
And then there was a second point around the actual refuse condition, which that does refer to an informal arrangement. Is there any way of firming that up?
It's. I mean, I'm not sure what Councillor Chapman is getting at, in the sense of that all the units will have access to the bin store, but I'm not sure whether we would be able to. We can condition that it's maintenance and so on, but what would Councillor Chapman be seeking with the other additional condition?
Maybe something you can come back with there, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, by all means, thank you, Chairman. As I say, on page 53, third paragraph down, it makes reference to the development of an informal on-plot management regime will be established to ensure that any refuse is positioned within this distance parameter on the collection days. This could be achieved by either a formal planning condition or informal arrangement. I'm just simply suggesting that I'd like to follow what it says in this plan and put a formal planning condition in.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm understanding what Councillor Chapman is seeking now. I think the requirement to maintain the bin store and the formal arrangement of access to and so on, and management of the bins so that they're available for collection and so on, I think we can cover that in one condition. So requiring a management plan for the refuse store. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Meg. Councillor Chapman, are you?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman. If it can all be done in one condition, that's great.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Councillor Birra and Councillor Chamdale indicated. Councillor Birra, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think it's a very comprehensive report by the department, and Councillor Chamdale just beat me to it, and I was going to second this one. So I'll go with the officer's recommendation.
No, thank you, Councillor Birra. Councillor Chamdale?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I was just going to say it's more like a belt and braces what Councillor Chapman was on about. When you have informal on-plot management, it's more a case of making somebody responsible for this, especially for saying like refuge and waste, which can attract a lot of undesirable. So I will definitely, you know, I think I was seconding it, go with it with the additions that Councillor Chapman has suggested.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdale. Before we go to the vote, Councillor Duncan, are you happy to continue to move with those additional refuse condition?
Yes, happy to do that, Chair. Thank you.
Just wanted to check that. Okay, I'm not seeing any other councillors indicate for agenda item 9, so we can move to the vote. Obviously, we are now voting on approval, but with the added condition which will delegate to firm up the refuse arrangements, including the bin store. So, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Approve with the extra condition.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the officer's recommendations with additional conditions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brightman.
I go with the officer's recommendations with the conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdale, you seconded. Councillor Tubadar.
For officers' recommendations and the conditions, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duncan, you moved. So, Councillor Bira.
Thank you, Chairman. I go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay. So I make
With
that
the
unanimous 7-0 for officer's recommendation with delegated authority to devise a condition to help with the refuse management and the bin store. Can you confirm?
Confirm, Chairman.
Okay, agenda item 9 is approved. So agenda item 10, which is the listed building consent.
I just come in just before you go to the vote, Chairman. Condition on this agenda item 10, this is a listed building consent, so we wouldn't have the refuse management plan condition on this particular application, as it only refers, this application is only for works to the listed building itself and not for the change of use, as it were, in particular. So in this particular case, we wouldn't have the refuse management condition on this application. We'd have it on item 9, which you've just voted on, and on item 11. I would be recommending that it's added to that item as well, but again, not for item 12 again, because that's a listed building application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks for guiding us through that, or particularly guiding me through that one, Meg, because we have got to get ourselves through 3 more votes yet. So, Councillor Duncan, you indicated.
Yes, I think we've talked through the merits of this scheme, and I'd like to move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Bira.
Thank you, Chairman. I second the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I can see Councillor Chamdale indicating there.
Thank you, Chairman. 16 conditions, 4 informatives, I think. Yeah, we're safe to go with that.
Very safe, I think. I'm not seeing anybody else indicate, so we can go straight to the vote on agenda item 10, listed building consent. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
For the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brightman.
Go with officer's recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brightman. Councillor Chamdale.
Officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tubadar.
For approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Bira and Councillor Duncan who moved and seconded respectively. So I take that, Neil, as 7 for officer's recommendation for agenda item 10. Can you confirm?
Confirm, Chairman.
Okay, agenda item 10 is approved. Right, over to agenda item 11, which I think we've already made a subtle change to through discussing the last item. Anything you want to add to this one, Meg, before we go to the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. No further additions other than to say that we will include the refuse management plan condition on this one as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can see Councillor Duncan indicating there.
Yes, I'd like to move item 11 with that additional condition as advised.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chapman, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll second that with the additional condition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing anybody else indicate, so we are now voting on agenda item 11 with an additional condition to firm up the refuge management for this site. So, Councillor Chapman, you seconded to Councillor Ahmed Walana.
For the officer recommendations to approve it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
Go with officers' recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal.
Officers' recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar.
For approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you move, so that leaves Councillor Bira.
Thank you, Chairman. I go with the officer's recommendation with the conditions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bira. That now leaves us 7 unanimous for agenda item 11 with delegated authority to add a condition on the refuge management. Neil, can you confirm that 7 out of 7?
I can, Chairman, confirmed.
Thank you. Agenda item 11 is approved. That brings us to the last of part 1 this evening, which is agenda item 12. Meg, again, anything before we go to the vote you wanted to just update members on, or can we go straight to the vote?
No, I think straight to the vote, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you're indicating?
Yes, move officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Chamdal, I think you just beat Councillor Chapman to it there.
Yeah, just like to ask, we've only got 15 conditions on this. On the previous one, there was a cross-sectional on 14 and 15. Could the officers let us know what the difference of those 14 and 15 are, please?
Good spot. Meg?
I think you might have me stumped here. I think what we've done is we've put on the conditions that have been recommended by the conservation officer. So clearly there is some work proposed on this one which is not proposed on, or on the other one which is not proposed on this one. We will check, make sure that all the conditions are being requested are on, but I'm not sure what the difference is between the two in terms of the conditions. So I need to go through each condition to find out why one's missing. Thank you, Chairman.
I think we better defer it then.
Councillor Duncan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think if you look on the previous one, there were 2 conditions on the cross sections 14 and 15 relating to units 3 and 4, first and second floors, and then unit 3 and ground floor commercial unit. So in this one, I think it's different because the front unit is just 1 unit. So I think it may relate to that. But, you know, obviously I don't want to prejudice officers' examination of those conditions, but I think if you look at them on the 2 applications and the 2 recommendations, that's what it relates to.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Duncan. I'm sure Meg will come back to us, myself as chairman and yourself as Labour lead, if there is a material difference that we need to consider on this one. But we are moved. Anyone want to help us along with this one? Councillor Brightman.
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brightman. Okay, right, we are moved, we're seconded. We can go to a vote on item 12 this evening. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
I'm for, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman, you seconded. Councillor Chamdal.
Officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar.
For approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you moved, and Councillor Bira.
Thank you, Chairman. I go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, I'll make that unanimous, 7 votes for officer's recommendation. Now, of course, if there is a change with that particular item that we've just discussed, then obviously you'll come back to us, Meg, as the chair and Labour lead.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll check the conditions against what's been requested, and then if there are any changes required, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, okay. I make that 7 out of 7, Neil, for officer's approval.
Yes, confirmed, Chairman.
Okay, I can confirm agenda item 12 is approved. Okay, that brings us to the end of part 1 for tonight's Central and South Planning Committee meeting. So thank you very much to all who's participated and supported us this evening. And I'm going to be saying good night now to anybody watching on YouTube, as I will ask Democratic Services Neil Fraser to disconnect the YouTube channel so we can go into part 2 in private. So good night, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. If members will remain muted while I just top the feed. Thank you.